So you just got an AR-15. Well, the possibilities are endless how you can build that rifle out. But the first thing you need is a sighting system. Generally, I recommend an optic of some type, but what optic are you going to choose? You can go with a red dot. Maybe a red dot with a magnifier. You can put a high-powered scope on it, although I don't really recommend that for a general purpose rifle. Maybe something more like an LPVO. LPVO with an offset red dot. A holographic with a magnifier. There are a lot of ways you can go about it. I mean, you can even get one of these, like a 3x prism, or even a 3x prism with a top dot. There are a lot of different optics choices that you could put on your AR-15. So what is the best route to go? Well, we're going to go over some of the pros and cons of some of the optics that I just mentioned here, because I do have experience with just about every type of optic that there is. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you what I recommend. Welcome back to Sawtooth Tactical. So optic choice is very important because that's going to have a lot to do with how you're able to use your rifle. I mean, you got to be able to aim it and shoot accurately. That is like number one after reliability. But do you want something with magnification or not? I mean, there's a lot of things to think about here. So let's talk about the most obvious choice first, and that is a red dot. So this is probably the most simple optic that you can get, is a red dot. It has 0 magnification, 1x, meaning like what you see, you're just like looking through a window. Nothing is magnified. And in general, they just have a red dot floating in space, hence why they're called a red dot. And you just put that dot on the target and pull the trigger. Of course, you do have to zero it. You're gonna have to zero all of the optics that we talk about in this video, but zeroing is pretty dang easy. Red dot is a great choice for an all-purpose type of gun. Now, it's not great if you want to shoot out to really long ranges, but you can shoot out to about 100 yards very easily with a red dot. I can easily make 100-yard hits with just a red dot with no magnification. And red dots these days, there are a lot of pros to them. So for one thing, most red dots now come with either shake awake or they're just constant on. Like this aim point here, it just stays on and the battery lasts for like 5 years. A lot of the other brands, like this is a Sig Sauer Romeo 5, got things like Holosun, they use shake awake technology. So when they're just sitting in your safe after, 10 minutes or something, they turn off to save battery life. But as soon as you pick it up, as soon as that thing feels any kind of jostle or movement, it turns on. And it is instant. As soon as you grab your rifle, that optic is on. And so there's a lot to be said for that. A red dot is just something you don't really have to think about a whole lot after you zero it. Just pick it up, use it. The battery lasts forever. Red dot technology has gotten really, really good to where there's even cheaper options like this Romeo 5 that work really well. And of course you can go with something more expensive like the aim point and have something that is proven and reliable. You know what? I've got 2 of these Romeo 5s and I've had them longer than any of my other optics. Spoiler alert, that is the first optic I ever bought, was a Sig Romeo 5. And both of the ones that I've owned for years still work just great. Now, with a red dot, you can also add a magnifier. A magnifier gives you some of that distance capability. So you've got 1x, put the magnifier in front of it. This one is a 3-power magnifier. You can get 4-power, 6-power magnifiers. Magnifiers do have, eye relief. So if you don't know what eye relief is, it means that the distance that your eye needs to be away from the optic in order to get a good sight picture through it. So like this one is actually not really mounted in a great spot because of the backup iron sight here. I should mount it farther back, and honestly, I probably will. And let's talk about iron sights really quick. I almost don't see the point right now, and I know a lot of people are gonna flame me in the comments for that. I used to put iron sights on all of my guns. And if there's anything that I've put on my guns that I've never needed, it's the iron sights. Now this video is sponsored by Aura. Optics are very important if you want to be able to use your rifle safely. Well, Aura online security is very important if you want to be able to use the internet safely. And everybody uses the internet these days. You're watching this YouTube video on the internet. Speaking of YouTube, the very best way to support Sawtooth Tactical is to click the first link in the description. That's aura.com/sawtoothtactical and sign up for a free 14-day, 2-week free trial and see if it's right for you or not. What does Aura do for you? Well, they take care of all of the stuff that kind of sucks about the internet. The stuff where, your data gets leaked and data brokers start selling your information to scammers and spammers. And so you get, emails from, spam companies, you get spam phone calls, you get scammed, or at least people attempt to scam you. All of that kind of stuff really sucks about the modern technical age that we live in 2025. But Aura, they take care of that. They scour the entire internet and they find anywhere where your data has been leaked and they submit opt-out requests on your behalf with the data brokers. And then you get taken off of those lists and your information isn't sold anymore. And really quickly, you stop getting scam calls and spam calls. I've been using it for over a year and I honestly love it. It's not something that I would have thought to have purchased, but since I've had it, it has made a drastic improvement in my life and I really appreciate that. They also take care of all of the rest of your online security besides just the data broker removal stuff. They have a team in the United States here to help you if you do get scammed. It's a really awesome company and only costs you $12 a month. But try it out absolutely free for 14 days at aura.com/sawtoothtactical. So while we're talking about red dots, we do have to mention red dot alternatives that do pretty much the same thing. This is an EOTech. People will call this a red dot. It's not, it's a holographic. And there is a difference. A red dot uses an LED that bounces off of the front lens, and that's how that works. Doesn't use much power. Well, in the EOTech, a holographic, as you see here from the little yellow warning, is actually a laser emitter, diode, whatever. It uses space age laser technology. It's actually very old technology to get a holographic image of your reticle. Now, there are pros and cons to that. The big con is the battery life. An EOTech is not going to last nearly as long as a red dot is when it comes to battery life. And at this point in time, they don't have shake awake or constant on or anything like that because your batteries would just be dying too quickly. And so with a holographic, you do have to turn it on when you want to use it. Now, there's a couple ways to do that. You can turn it on for 4 hours or 8 hours. But there's pros to it too. So a holographic doesn't need a notch filter on a lens that it's bouncing your reticle off of. It is, it's a holographic image, and so you can have very, very clear lenses. Nothing looks more clear to look through than an EOTech, and that is huge. And what else is huge is the window size. EOTechs are one of my very favorite optics, despite some of their drawbacks. I think that they are awesome for a one and only SHTF rifle, or something that you're going to use for home defense. Maybe you do want something with constant on or shake awake, but EOTechs are fantastic. Now, this is another rifle where I've got backup iron sights, but again, I've never used them. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with having backups. 2 is 1, 1 is none kind of thing, right? But I wouldn't get just iron sights. In this day and age, you might as well get an optic. It's just going to be easier and better. EOTech holographics also work very well with magnifiers. In fact, this might be my favorite optic setup, is an EOTech on a riser with a flip to center magnifier. So it just flips down out of the way, up to use it instead of having to flip off to the side. Speaking of risers, because we'll just go over that really quickly. Risers are not just for night vision like many people seem to think. Yes, they definitely help when using night vision, But in general, it is more comfortable and easier to shoot with your head up than right down on the rifle. And so to me, putting your optic on a bit of a riser, whether 1.93 or 2.26 like this, I think does make for a more comfortable shooting position and just more enjoyable way to shoot. Yeah, EOTech with a riser, with a magnifier is awesome. So then let's talk about magnification, because for the most part, we've been talking about one power optics, yet one power optics possibly with magnifiers. Well, you can also put full-on scopes on an AR-15 rifle, but I don't really recommend it. This is only really going to be good shooting at greater distances, and it's going to be really tough up close. And I think that with a general purpose fighting rifle, you want to prioritize 1x in my opinion. And so that is why that you see on a lot of rifles a LPVO, low power variable optic. Like this is a 1:6 LPVO. And I think a 1:6 LPVO is a great optic. Now, is it going to be as fast to acquire your sight as a red dot is? No, but it can be pretty quick with some practice. You are going to have eye relief to deal with. Even at 1 power, you kind of have to have your head in just the right place. But at 1 power, you can shoot both eyes open and acquire a sight picture relatively quickly. You're going to see here that I do have an offset red dot with this. There's a few reasons for that, and we're not going to get too deep into all this today. But for one thing, I can have this at a higher magnification setting for shooting at greater distances. But if I need to engage something up close, I just cant the rifle over and use the red dot. And no, this light does not get in the way for a couple reasons. Main one being that everything, again, is on risers here, just tall mounts. And so this optic sits up higher than the light does. But I do think that if you are going to go LPVO route, an offset red dot is a really nice thing to have, just because red dots are honestly the easiest optic to shoot. Now, some people do have astigmatism, and so red dots don't look like a red dot to them. I actually have an astigmatism. I did get laser eye surgery years ago, and that was before I was really into shooting. That was over 20 years ago. So I'm not sure exactly how a red dot reticle looked to my eyes before that. It does look a little bit starbursty to me. It's not a perfect dot, but there are ways to get around that too. There are prism optics. So this is a Burris. Primary Arms makes a bunch of them now. This one is a 3-power fixed magnification optic, but you can even get 1-power prism optics. So they kind of work like a red dot, but they have an etched reticle. And so people with astigmatism generally see a more clear reticle with these. The thing is that you are going to have eye relief to deal with on something like this as well. You know, an ACOG is kind of the same idea, 3-power fixed magnification. Yes, I know there are a lot of different models of ACOGs, but that is an option if you have astigmatism. The other option is to just kind of embrace the starburst. It doesn't bother me. If you're shooting target focus, that shouldn't really matter anyway. You don't really want to focus on your reticle. You want to focus on your target, and you just overlay that dot on the target. The other thing that I've found is that I get more of that starburst effect with just a single dot reticle. If I do have a donut of death, like an EOTech reticle, it seems to look more clear to me. Now, without getting too deep into it, the EOTech reticle itself is not perfectly clear, and that is just how it is with the holographic design. But again, if you're target focused, that shouldn't matter. Something like this right here, this is the Holosun 512C. This is a red dot, but it has a nice big window like an EOTech. Let's see if I can get the reticle on screen. It also has that donut of death circle dot reticle. And for some reason, even if you have astigmatism, these reticles seem to really look clear to most people. This one looks perfectly crisp and clear to me. This is probably, of all of my optics, the easiest one to use. There's a reason it's on my home defense gun. All the benefits of a red dot, where, it's just easy to acquire, good battery life, fast, just super easy to use. But also some of the benefits of an EOTech with the big window and the circle dot reticle. I absolutely love the Holosun 512C. But we were talking about magnified optics, and I do want to get back to that for just a minute, because if you do think that you're going to be shooting at greater distances, it is nice to have magnification. If I'm shooting anywhere 200 yards and further, I would rather take this rifle with the LPVO with up to 6x magnification than anything that only has a red dot, or even anything that has just a 3x magnifier. But to be fair, you can shoot out to a pretty good distance with a 3-power magnifier. Thing is though, with an LPVO, you have different types of reticles with bullet drop compensators, Christmas trees, windage, there's a lot you could do to get out to greater distances, and you can get out even farther with a high-powered scope like this. But again, I only recommend something like this on a rifle that you specifically mean to use at distance, not a general purpose fighting rifle, which is what we're talking about in this video. So what optic do I recommend? Well, I think for the seasoned shooter, I think that all depends on your gun. As you can see, I like to have lots of different optics. 16-inch barrel, I'd like to have some magnification. 14.5, also magnification, but less magnification. 10.3, 1 power. Barrel length and optic choice kind of go hand in hand. What is my very favorite? Well, it is the EOTech with the flip to center magnifier. But if I was getting my first AR-15, I think that the right optic to get is just a red dot. Just like this, just like this. It's going to be the easiest thing for you to use. The easiest thing for you to learn on is just plain easy. It's easier to use than iron sights. It's easier to use than a scope. It's easier to use than anything. It is literally as simple as put the dot on the target and pull the trigger. Red dots are the way to go, and your rifle should have one. If you don't have an optic yet, and you're trying to decide you've got $150 to spend, don't spend it on iron sights, spend it on a red dot. If you want to put backup iron sights on it later on, because you feel like you need to have that fail-safe, go for it. But you can get a Sig Romeo 5 for the same price as a set of Daniel Defense iron sights. I mean, I know which one I would rather shoot with, and that would be the red dot 7 days a week. So that's kind of this video. I do have things that I prefer for different types of shooting, but I've got to admit that most of my shooting is done 100 yards and in, and I mostly shoot on 1 power, and so I like to prioritize 1 power, which is the reason why I don't think that an LPVO is necessarily what you want for your first rifle, first optic. Maybe, on your second rifle, you put an LPVO on your longer barreled gun and a red dot on your shorter barreled gun. Maybe you put a magnifier if you find yourself needing that magnification, shooting at some longer distances. But for most people, getting a general AR-15, I think that a red dot is the way to go. Do your research, but there's a lot of good red dots on the market. They're not very expensive these days. There's a lot of also really crappy ones that are really cheap. Don't just cheap out on something that's garbage. That's why I said do your research. You can get something like a Holosun or a Sig for a pretty decent price, and that's about as low as I would go. That way you're going to have something that's going to last. Like I said, I've got 2 of these Romeo 5s. They're like $150 red dots. They've lasted me years and thousands of rounds. Same thing with this Holosun. It's done very, very well. So yeah, for your first optic, get a red dot. That's my recommendation. If it's not your first optic, well, then you probably already know what you want to get because you're like me and you've tried a lot of things and you know what's going to work for your application. If this video is helpful to you in any way, please give me a like. Let me know down in the comments, what is your favorite Optic setup? Let the new guys know. I'm sure that is helpful. And from Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.